Well, there have been extraordinary scenes in Berlin tonight as thousands of people gathered to hear Barack Obama deliver key foreign policy speech on his current European tour. Democratic presidential hopeful laid out his vision for America's place in the new world order, saying he was speaking as a proud citizen of the world, of the world, of the world.
It is a big idea. It is a big idea. A new world order.
Hello friends, I am the Anti-Terrorist. Thank you for all of your emails and your messages of support, and for staying part of the conversation. Now, back in World War II, in Italy, they had an Italian fascist government. The Germans had a National Socialist government. And here in the United Kingdom and in America, we have democratic governments. But no matter what label you put on the ideology, whether socialist or democratic, all of them are fascist governments when the business interests of the country run them. The likes of the pharmaceutical industry, auto industry, the oil industry, they're the ones that dictate policy to the prime ministers and presidents and their governments.
Now this is the way it's gonna be, you hear? Now shut up with your high and mighty ideals. Shut up with the promises you made during your campaign to get into office. Just read the teleprompter and say what we tell you to say, you schmuck.
And that's exactly what the politicians do. Politicians who don't sit down, shut up and do as they're told, get shot. Now, corporations don't pay tax. They're tax collectors for the state. It's a symbiotic relationship, similar to that of a shark and a pilotfish. There isn't a corporation that was ever chartered in the United Kingdom, the United States, or anywhere else for that matter, that's ever paid 1 penny, 1 cent in tax, at any time, for any cause or reason, past, present, or future. Oh, it's a common myth here in the West that corporations pay taxes. And I imagine that you Australians and New Zealanders, Europeans and Americans must be sitting there saying,
"Hey, the corporations need to pay the taxes. They're making massive profits and they should pay their fair share."
Well, that may be true. I won't deny it. Corporations probably ought to be taxed. They probably ought to pay their fair share. I don't know if it's right or wrong or good or bad. I don't make these policy decisions. I'm just here to report to you that they don't. The corporations make a lot of pretense about paying taxes. That's true, they do write checks and they do send them in, but they're not the ones paying the taxes. See, if you were to pick any corporation and go to the Home Office in the UK or your Secretary of State's office, you'll be able to buy a copy of that corporation's charter. And in that charter, you'll find that the corporation gets paid a certain percentage on their invested capital. You might want to look up invested capital in a legal dictionary. Now this bit's pretty revelatory, so get your pens and paper out, friends, and allow me to elucidate. Let's suppose, for the sake of our discussion, that you are the buying agent for Acme Power Company, and your job is to buy stuff. Now as the buying agent, someone says, "Hey, we need power poles." Now logically you'd want to get the best power poles for the least amount of money, wouldn't you? So, you go to the Ajax Power Pole Company, and they've got power poles for £300. Then you go to the Zap Power Pole Company, and they've got power poles for £150. Now, assuming that the quality is essentially the same, they're all the same grade of wood, they're all treated with creosote, and they're all the same size. Whose power poles are you going to buy? Ajax, £300 per pole, Zap, £150 per pole. So the music plays, the clock goes tick-tock, the little dingy thing goes ding-ding-ding. Okay, time's up. What have you got? Now, if you said,
"I'm gonna buy the £150 power poles because they're half price and they're the same quality as the other poles for £300.
You are fired, dummy. You're out of here, nitwit. And you're probably sitting there saying,
But I saved the company £150 per pole for 300 power poles. I just saved the company £45,000.
Well, the reason we're going to ditch you, numbskull, is because our profit comes from our invested capital. And when we buy these power poles, we buy them out of cash flow, from the ratepayers' cash flow coming across the counter. And then we're going to collect 8% on 300 power poles. You see, if we've got 300 power poles times £300, That equals £90,000 times 0.8%, which is £7,200 a year, forever, or times 30 years, whichever comes first, which is £216,000. So what you're proposing here, genius, is that you're going to save us £45,000 on the initial price and cost us £216,000 in profit. Can you spell profit? Have you ever noticed that all of these power companies, telephone companies, and other utility companies always drive new cars and vans? They can buy a new truck for $50,000 this year, use it and trade it in for another one 12 months later. You ever notice that? Well, wake up and smell the coffee. Why are they doing that? Because that's the way they make their money. Just like defense contractors make their money, on cost plus 10 and overruns. That's why you've got $200 toilet seats, £50 screws and $150 hammers. It's nothing personal. It's just business. Now let's take this a little further, shall we? The corporation's charter, as an example, entitles it to make 8% profits on its invested capital every year forever. Now, do they ever have good years in which they make 10% profit? Nope. Never does the power company make 10% in a year. Never have, doesn't now, and never will. Well, do they ever have a bad year in which they make 6 or 5%? Nope. Never has, doesn't now, never will. The power company makes 8% per year on invested capital. They did in the past, they are now, and they will forever. Because they're guaranteed 8% by law. And here's what happens. When the legislature raises the power company's tax, their 8% is going to drop to 7%, or some other number. So they go to the utilities regulator and they say,
Look, we're entitled to 8% profit by law. So as a result of your increased tax levy, we need a rate increase of 3.31757%. Because that's the amount of the tax that's been levied upon us, and therefore, that's what we require to bring our profits back up to 8%.
the percentage of invested capital may vary from corporation to corporation, but they all operate under the same rules. What they do is collect the money, the tax money from you. But you don't call it tax. You call it your bill, or the rate that you pay. The corporation raised your electric rates by £5 a month, £60 a year, and they in turn pay that over to the state. And they call it the power company tax, or the phone company tax, or the water company tax, or whatever it may be. What the hell do you think Microsoft is doing when their taxes are raised? They just passed it on to you with a rate increase. And the legislatures aren't stupid either. If they came to us folk out here and said, we're going to raise your taxes by £5 a month, we'd go ballistic. We'd probably go and register to vote and vote that idiot out of office. So, being wise as a serpent, the politicians say,
We want more money to spend. What we've got to do is get the people behind this.
so they propagandize us.
Hey, the power company is a big corporation making billions and billions in profit. My Bob, that's obscene. We need to raise their taxes so that they pay their fair share.
Now, if at any time in the year the corporation accidentally makes 8.17754% profit, you know what they have to do? They've got to do a little arithmetic, divide it by the number of ratepayers and send you a rebate check. Okay, so we understand so far that the power company doesn't pay tax, and nor does any other corporation. If you thought that was a kicker, wait for it, we're not quite done yet. Let's suppose that you and I are the CEO and chief bottle washer of our own corporation. I'm the CEO, by the way. You're the chief bottle washer, just for the record. I don't want you jumping to conclusions about being able to boss me around. Now, the legislature decides that all corporations aren't paying their fair share, so they're going to raise our corporate income tax by 5%. So we, at the Anti-Terrorist Corporation, sit down in executive session and decide to raise our prices by 5% to deal with our 5% income tax increase. You see, we're going through a period of inflation here in the West. Well, actually, all of you good folks in the world are going through a period of inflation. And so the corporation that's selling you the big screen TV, selling you that new car, have got to raise their prices little by little as time progresses along. I mean, they can't absorb these inflationary costs forever, can they? Now, let me give you some numbers. Let's learn a lesson here about corporate taxes and corporate price increases. Let's say that the Anti-Terrorist Corporation is making a nice round sum of $1 million a year. So write down 1 million, put a pound sign there in front of it, and write gross sales after it. Now, we would net about 10% of that. Some years we might net 12%, some years 8%, but generally, year after year, we're netting about 10% profit. So under that 1 million, put down 10, and put a percentage, and draw a line underneath that, and then you multiply the 10 by 1 million. Patronizing? More? So that's £100,000 profit from £1 million of sales. Now, under ordinary circumstances, before the tax increase, we had to pay 5% income tax on 100,000. So we multiplied that 100,000 by 0.5%, which is £5,000. However, now, the clowns in the legislature have raised our taxes by another 5%. Well, how much is that? Well, it would be 5,250. So the actual amount that our tax has gone up is £250. Meanwhile, we raised our prices by 5% to accommodate the tax increase, remember? Tally up the 10% profit from our 1,050,000 and how much profit have we got? Are you following along, friends? Are you starting to catch on yet? And some of you folks out there and the legislators are demanding that we tax the corporations. You lunatics might actually believe that BP Corporation is going to pay that tax out of their profits. Well, I've got news for you. What you're going to have here is higher petrol prices. When you start taxing Tesco's or Walmart, you're heading for a £3 loaf of bread, because they're just going to pass that tax on to you. And that was your arithmetic lesson in business. Corporations don't pay tax. They just collect it for their government. That's all. And anyone who tells you otherwise has their head shoved up where the sun doesn't shine. So what's the answer? Well, I might start looking into trusts and pre-trust. We want to operate as they do. Run ourselves as a business and write off any expenses, write off or reclaim any money we spend into the public. And there's plenty of information out there. You just need to ask Google the right questions. And everything I've said is verifiable. And if my calculations are slightly wonky, you'll have to forgive me. After all, I was institutionalized in the public fool system from an early age. I do recommend that you verify it for yourself, though. Look at the man who's bringing you this message. I'm a psychologist's wet dream. Interesting times, huh? Thanks for listening.
And people better understand that they mean exactly what they're saying. It's a new world order they're trying to create, and they're trying to do so not only without approval or consent of the government in this country, but despite the popular will. This is a straightforward assault by the elitists in this country.